everyone, it's Lisa from My Dreaming Soap. Welcome to my channel and thanks for dropping by. It's soap challenge time again. Now, for this soap challenge, which is the challenge set in September 2023, we had to make horizontal straight layers in our soap. So the key things there were that the layers had to be horizontal, so going across your soap bar, which meant we couldn't do anything weird like a tilted layer soap or chevrons or anything. They had to be straight, or horizontal. And also the key thing was that they had to be straight. So it was really important that we got a really good pour and made the straight layers. And the straight layers had to be made by pouring them. You weren't allowed to pour a layer, get it a bit wrong, and then scrape it straight. That was a big no-no. It was all about your skills of pouring beautiful straight layers. Now, as you may or may not know, the Challenge Club is split into 3 sections. There's the regular section for people who've been making soap up to 3 years. There's the advanced section for people who've been making soap over 3 years. And then there's the winners section for the people who have placed in the top 3 of the advanced section more than, I think it's 3 times. Anyway, those people have to get bumped out of, those other categories and put into a winners section. Now, in the winners section, which is the one that I'm in, we had some extra requirements for this month, which is quite normal. Normally, the categories alter. The regular one is more straightforward to allow people to get good basic skills. The advanced has a little bit more difficulty, and then the winners for this time has some extra in it. So what we had to do is we had to make our horizontal straight layers, but they had to be in at least half of the soap. And then on top of that, in the remainder of the soap, we had to do another technique. And it couldn't be something like just pouring in something out of a jug, like in the pot swirl or something, because that would basically just be another layer. And that was the requirement for both the advanced and the winners category. And then on top of that, just for the winners category, we had to make our soaps with only plant-based colours. No micas, no TD, no clays. It wasn't natural, it was plant-based. And also the fragrance had to be an essential oil that we had to use. So it added that extra difficulty for us in the winners category. Now, gosh, I've planned my design, and I find when we have to use plant-based colorants, because they use a lot of infusions to make those plant-based colorants, I end up doing a lot of calculations. I've been busy doing my calculations. Oh, hang on, where are they? Here they are. And I've had to produce 2 huge spreadsheets of calculations of all the colorants and how I need to disperse them on all of that stuff. And the reason I've got so many is because obviously it's a challenge. You're not going to win a challenge or get placed if you do 3 layers. You're going to have to do multiple layers, and then you've got to do the other technique, and all of those things. We've got to have lots of different colours and shades, so it requires an awful lot of work. So probably not a soap I'm ever going to repeat. As I said, with all of these calculations to do and all these different colours to mix up, it's going to take me a little bit of work. So better get on with it. Come on, let's go and make this complicated soap. The first thing I'm going to do for this soap is make some tiny weeny little dolphins. Now I'll just bring an image of my soap up on the screen right here. So the idea behind my soap is that I want to use my straight layers bit. Now I know that picture kind of looks a bit like an ombre, but I couldn't be bothered to draw in every single layer, as it were. So the idea is it's supposed to be a view looking out of a cave or something, or from behind a wall out onto an ocean scene. So I'm going to do the straight layers going up the wall section for the cave, looking through into a sort of seascape. And in my seascape, I'm going to have 3 little jumping dolphins. So first of all, I'm just going to make these jumping dolphins. So they're only very small, so I don't need to use a big extruder. I'm just using a basic small extruder. And I've made up some soap dough. Now this is just some plain soap soap dough that I always keep when I do natural soaps, and also we've got some activated charcoal in it. I need to be very careful with this challenge. Remember, it's only plant-based colours, so I can't have used any of my silvers that I own, like my antique silver or anything in a mica. And also we're not allowed to use titanium dioxide. Now, there's always a bit of a dispute whether TD is actually natural or not, but whether you class it as natural or not, it's not allowed for this challenge because it's not a plant-based colorant, whereas activated charcoal is. Well, most of them, because most activated charcoal is made from coconut carbon. So all I've done, as you can see, is I've just used a small amount of activated charcoal into my plain soap base colour to create myself a nice colour grey that I want for my little dolphins. So I'm just going to get that rolled out and extruded, and then leave those on the side until we're ready for them. So there's my little dolphins. I only need 3 of these, so I'll get rid of one of those a little bit later on. The first thing I'm going to do is start preparing my colour mixes for this soap that I'm going to make. And let me just run you through the infusions that I've already got made. I'm not doing the infusions in this video because it will just be far too long. And in the description I'll link to where I've made some other infusions. So, what have I got? So first of all, non-infusion type things. I've got my activated charcoal that I'm going to be using for my black. I'm going to do some black mica lines every now and again, and I'm going to use this to make grey. For brown, I've got some Dutched cocoa. Now, whether you use Dutched or just normal cocoa, doesn't really matter. This is just what I've got. So some cocoa powder, and again, cocoa is plant-based, so that's fine for me to use for my brown. And then infusions, I've got my indigo infusion, I've got a madder infusion, that will give me a sort of deep red, pinky sort of colour depending on the strength I use it. My alkanet, which will give me a purple, or when I use it a little bit weak, more of a sort of purpley grey type colour. And then my annatto, which will give me a nice yellow colour. So those are going to be all of the colours that I want to use. So what I need to do is, so for example on my wall that I'm doing, I'm using some of these colours a couple of times. So for example, like the madder, I want sort of like almost a deep bricky colour, but also I want a lighter pinky colour. So I'll be infusing this at 2 different rates. And what that means for an infusion is I'm going to need several things. First of all, I make up the oils for my soap without olive oil. So this is my normal base recipe without the olive oil in it. And that's because all of my infusions are made using olive oil. So therefore, each colour will have some of my base in, that's minus any olive oil. It will have a certain amount of infusion. So if I want it a strong dark colour, I'll put basically all of this in, or as much of this in that would replace all of my olive oil. So therefore I would just have a nice strong infusion in the base that I need. If I want a lighter colour, like for when I do a light blue, what I'll do is I'll put less of the infusion in. And because I'm putting less of the infusion in, that means there's not enough olive oil going back into that. So therefore I will just add extra olive oil to make it up. Okay, and that's where all these calculations have come from, is I've had to work out for each colour how much oil I need to make into my soap, how strong I want the infusion, to work out how much infusion I need, and then I've had to work out how to add in the extra little bit of olive oil to actually make out these colours. So that's what this, and I'm not going to zoom in on this or anything because it's just specific to this soap. That's what all these calculations are, just to make all the different colours that I need to make, and then I can use those throughout the soap. So that's what I'm going to do first of all. I'm not going to do it on screen. All I'm literally going to do is just go through and just weigh out and make up these colours by taking a bit of this, a bit of the infusion, and if necessary a bit of the olive oil, and just bringing up these colours. One thing I will do with these infusions is I will be straining them as well, because you can see probably, you know, quite a few of them are a little bit bitty, and you don't want that in your soap. Okay, so I'm going to do that and make up those colours, which will take me a little while, and then we'll come back when I've done that. I've prepared everything I need, I think, for my, let's call it the embed, the sea view bit that we've got. So I've taken the oils that I need, remember that olive oil, the infusion, and my base oils, and my indigo infusion for this one, and I've made a dark version and a light version, just purely putting less indigo infusion in the light. I've got just some plain soap batter, which will give me my white. We're not using any titanium dioxide or anything, so just plain soap colour. And then to make my sun, I've got an annatto infusion in these oils. Then the other thing that I've done is I'm going to make this sea view section, this sort of embed bit, in the mould that the final soap's going to be made in, but I don't want to pour the entire width across and then waste a whole load of soap. So I've just made a sort of a makeshift divider. I've just got some of that plastic corrugated card and just put some little shims in it, just so I'm not wasting too much soap. So I'm just going to be using this side of the soap mould, so just sort of grabbing what I had at home to make that sort of homemade divider there. So the first thing I need to do is make my sea. So I'm going to do a darker blue for the sea, because I've got sea and sky and I need them to differentiate. So a darker blue here for the sea. I've already weighed out my lye solution and my sodium lactate, so I'm just going to add that in. Okay, let's just get that blended up. I didn't blend that very much, so I'm just wiping the soap up the side of my jug, and I'm just going to leave that for a little while just to make sure it's emulsified. If the soap isn't emulsified, I'll see that splitting apart, but if I can leave that for like 30 seconds or a minute, and then if it's still bond together, then it's nicely emulsified and I'm safe to proceed with it. That seems to be perfectly fine, so I'm just going to take my essential oil. I've weighed out all my essential oil for the whole soap and blended it in this little pot. So I can just take out what I need each time. Okay, so I'll get that blended in, or just stirred in actually. I'm not using necessarily an accelerating essential oil. To me, it's more important to have these layers going nicely and be nice and fluid, and then I'll wait for them to set up rather than hurrying along. I've got a whole load of things planned to do while I make this soap, so that will be good. Okay, so there's my first layer done. I'm going to leave that to set up, and then I'll come in and do that little white bit. So this is all nicely set up now. So what I'm going to do is take this little spatula and just rough up the top just a little bit. I don't want to do it too much because this is going to be sort of quite in the distance, this sea. So I don't want it to, there's some ginormous waves or anything. Okay, so just really touching the surface very quickly. Okay, that will do. And then I've got my next layer, which is just some plain soap. This is going to be a white layer. And my lye solution and sodium lactate. This is just going to be a tiny thin little layer on here. Now what I'm going to do with this is I am going to pour some of this off just as that's mixed, because I don't want to blend it all up fully yet, because I want a little bit of white on its own, and then the rest I'm going to use in the ombre. Get this blended properly now. That should be enough. Now I do want this white to set up, so I'm going to just warm it a little bit. Okay, so that's 107 now, so good, that's quite nice and warm. And let's just get that poured in. Okay, so just a really tiny, weeny little layer there. Now I'm just going to leave that for a second or so. When it's to start setting up, I don't mind if the next layer mixes in with it a bit, because it's going to be sort of like the top of those waves. So that will be okay, I don't mind with that. But I do want a chance of seeing a sort of white area, you know, like the spumy bit at the top of waves. So I would like that to have chance to set up, but I don't want it to take too long and let this get too thick. We're not set up in there yet, but we're getting there. So I'm just going to take the time now to put my little dolphins in. I want to make sure, try and get them around the right way. Right. Okay, so I think that was good. I don't think you can see them. You can probably just see some of the grey lines in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish emulsifying this white that I had, still nice and fluid. And then this is my second indigo layer. This is the one with a lower rate of the indigo in it. And I'm going to sort of ombre it in as much as I can, really. I may use a squeeze bottle, I haven't decided yet. So I'm just going to I've got to put my lye solution in here, which I've got measured out. And I'll get that blended up. Okay, so I'm just sort of ombreing this in. I'm not tilting the soap and doing a normal poured ombre, because I want the ombre effect to be sort of quite straight across. I don't want it to be the sort of loopy style that you'll get if you cut an ombre soap.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach every
Right, I think that's in there enough. I'm going to now leave that to set up a little bit, because then I'm going to scrape that and then put the sun in. I think we're set up enough now just to do a little scrape. So I'm going to use a little scraper that I've made to go through and scrape out where I want the sun.
about your heart. Maybe the trees will whisper the word. Maybe the sun will spread your joy to the ones who lost their hope.
So this is now my annetto, which is going to give me my sun colour. I've got my essential oil and everything that I need in there, so I'm just going to go in now and fill that sun in. Okay, I warmed that up, so that's now thickening up quite nicely actually. Okay, so I'm going to leave this because next is the tricky bit where I've got to leave this enough so this will set up, because I'm going to remove the divider and I've got to make sure I get it right so everything doesn't collapse and I've wasted my time and have to start all this again. So I'm going to do that. Now you could say, well, just leave it overnight. I could do that, but what I want to do is I want to use a scraper to scrape along the side of this soap to create the shape of the cave. If I left it all night till it's got really solid, I'd have to try and carve out that shape with some sort of other tool, a knife or something, or cut it in some way, and I really don't want to have to do that. Okay, so this is going to sleep for a little while till I'm confident that I can get that divider removed, and then hopefully it's that careful balance that it's still going to be soft enough for me to scrape, but solid enough that it's not going to fall over. And bear in mind, some of that blue will be a bit firmer anyway, the bit that's been poured earlier on. Right, I'm going to have a go at pulling this out. I've had a prod at the top here and it seems pretty firmly set up but still movable. Excuse the helicopter going overhead. So I'm hoping I can pull this out and not have it all collapse. Ta-da! Perfecto! Good. So you can see my little sort of what's going on in there. Now the next bit is to hopefully be able to scrape this to the shape that I want. Now this isn't going to be the easiest thing because it's pretty set up at the bottom there. So what I've done is when I made my scraper this time is I made it extra thick so I've got more chance of scraping against this base, but let's see. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect because it's obviously supposed to be a craggy sort of cave anyway.
You fill my head with rose.
My seascape bit has worked really nicely. I'm really pleased with that. And as you can see, I've crossed off 3 little squares there. So what I'm going to do now is my layers. Now clearly I'm not going to go and record and make you sit tortuously through. I've got 25 layers that I'm going to put into this soap. So let me just talk you. Now I'm not going to go through all the figures or anything here. Is what I've done is I did sort of like a little design of how I want it with I'm going to sort of some browns and some greys and some reds and some purples, that sort of thing. And it's the idea is it kind of looks like the strata in the rock that makes up this cave. That's where I'm coming from with that. So I do have some colours that repeat themselves. So what I'm going to do is each time I get to the first colour, like I'm going to do my cocoa powder, my light version of my cocoa powder, I'm going to mix up all the oils that I need for that to get all the infusion and everything done. And then I know for each time I use it how much I want to pour off for that particular layer. So I don't have to keep mixing up the infusions every single time. Now my layers are going to be deliberately different. I don't want, you know, them to be exactly the same thickness as they go through because strata in rocks wouldn't be like that. I mean, admittedly, the strata aren't going to be completely straight and that's the objective of the challenge. But yeah, some of them will be thicker, some of them will be thinner, and a couple of times I'm going to drop in a mica line. My favourite, if you know me, you know I hate them, but I'm going to go in and do one. So that is my plan. So the first thing I'm going to do is my first line 1, this is going to be a long day, is my light cocoa, and I'm going to use it several times. So I'm going to mix all that up. I'm going to pour off enough to make the first layer and just mix that up, and it's going to be making up tiny weeny little batches. I mean, these batches, let's have a look at my oils. And that first layer, just 42 grams of oil, and I go down as low as quite a few of them only have 25 grams, so I get some really skinny layers. Okay, so I'm going to just do some mixing up, and then we'll come out when I pour the first layer. Right, I've mixed up my first little layer of cocoa, and I'm now just going to get this, a bit squishy, getting it into this mould, into the mould.
I can't help but dream away, standing on a field with you and flowers everywhere. Maybe there is a star with your name. One thing I know is that.
Now, as long as these layers are poured when they're fluid, they will self-level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on with this, making up all the layers in the different colour. I'll film the odd layer as I put it in, but I'm sure you don't want to see me mix up and pour in 25 different layers. But yeah, every now and again I'll come in and just do a little pour of one of the layers, and then we'll finish off the top and see what else we've got going on. I've done 3 layers now, so I'm going to pop in a little very gentle mica line. Now, I've obviously got the difficulty with mica lines is I don't want to get all the mica. Well, activated charcoal is all we can use really, because it's got to be plant-based. I've got to try and get it on here without getting it on the sides of the soap, because I don't want it all down the other bit. So I'm just going to, seems to be working okay actually. Gently drop it in off of this paintbrush, and hopefully keep these sides nice and clean. Okay, I'm happy with that. It's not a heavy covering, but I didn't want a heavy covering, just a little light covering. Hopefully it will show through a tiny bit. I kind of want it to just look like bits of granules in the wall. Just going to clean the side off and then pour this next layer.
Has a heart as pure, no, not like yours.
Right, so there's that layer with the activated charcoal under it, and that's a light grey layer. It looks a little bit darker than light grey, so hopefully that will sort of lighten up through the saponification. Right, I'm going to carry on with some more layers and then come back when I'm near the top.
Dreaming of you, dreaming of you, I'm dreaming of you. What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars. Dreaming of you. Dreaming of you. Dreaming of you.
So here we are with our final layer. So it's, you can see there, that is a sort of dark chocolate or darkish chocolate layer, cocoa layer. This is a light one. Just to finish that off. And then what I've made up is a teeny weeny bit of annetto and a teeny weeny bit of alkanet as well, just so I can have some little bit of swirl on the top. So I'm happy with that. I'm just now going to finish that off. It's been in and out of my hot cupboard for pretty well all the time I've been pouring it. The side looks really cool. Oh gosh, I don't think I'm going to be able to get that down because I can't tip this up. But anyway, you'll see it tomorrow when I cut it. So I'm just going to put that away now and leave that overnight, and then we'll come back to cut it tomorrow. Here's our soap. It's actually a couple of days later. So let's get this cut. Okay, there we go. Let's have a look at what we've got inside then. Ah, that's come out really nice. Okay, so we've got our little sort of cave wall. Maybe it looks a little bit odd for a cave, you know, being that stripy, but remember the idea of the challenge was to do these straight layers in the soap, and my little sun coming through, and you can just see them in the distance there, those tiny little quite fat dolphins jumping around in the sea. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. So look at another one. Grab this one. I mean, they should all be pretty well the same. All that's going to happen each time is we're going to have our little tiny dolphins in sort of slightly different positions. Okay, and I do think that these colours may come out a little bit more as it sits for a couple of weeks. That's why I've done this one early, just to make sure those colours are at their best before I actually have to submit it into the challenge. And here's a final photo of the soap. I hope you liked the soap and you've enjoyed the video. The video was a little bit longer than normal, but there was quite a lot going on and I struggled to really sort of cut any more out without sort of losing the process of the soap. If you have enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you gave me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, why not subscribe to my channel? Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy soaping!